Уважаеми господин
Prime Minister, Madam Ribera, Executive Vice President of the European Commission, ministers, members of the European Parliament, guests. This is the start of the fourth day of the Green Transition Forum 2025. And although we still have 2 days ahead of us filled with interesting, meaningful discussions, I think we can draw the first conclusions. On Tuesday, 800 people attended the talk of Professor Daran Acemoglu, dedicated to who will own the future. Of course, there is everybody has an answer, whether the US, China, AI, tech giants, but there was a red thread of concern about the future of Europe and the world. What I took out of Professor Acemoglu's talk, however, is that we hold the future in our hands. And here I would like to thank Monica, to our incredibly small but dedicated team, for their support and for enabling us to have this incredible event. The world is complex, it is unstable, it is next to impossible to predict what will happen next. So the first conclusion is that we need continuous, constant, meaningful dialogue, and this is what we're doing here at the Green Transition Forum. We have more than 350 panelists. We have more than 5,000 registered participants seeking knowledge, seeking working solutions. It is a paradox, but our society in the communication era are highly polarized. It's as if we lived on separate islands, set apart from each other. We find it very difficult to find common solutions. So dialogue has to be restored. This year, the discussions are at a brand new level, not only in terms of the number of participants and the scope of the participants, but also because all key participants, our international guests, both Nicoletta and Professor Acemoglu and Madam Ribera and Madam Manzato and Mrs. Zakharieva, the Bulgarian Euro Commissioner, accepted both to participate in the panels, but to also meet face-to-face with representatives of businesses, of the civil society, to take and answer questions in our efforts and endeavour to find answers to the important questions of today. And the second conclusion is a logical consequence. We have so much expert potential and know-how that it would be a pity for all these ideas to be left behind, hanging in the air. And this is why, after the end of the forum, we will try to institutionalize this dialogue. On Monday, Bulgaria, Monica has already announced the Bulgaria 2050 initiative, yet another invitation for a discussion and for seeking working solutions. So together with our participants and guests and panelists, we will be turning to European institutions with proposals, with suggestions. And the third conclusion is that our region of Central and Eastern Europe is now thinking about itself as a single region, a region with similar problems, similar challenges, the ministers of energy of Bulgaria, Romania, and energy have voiced an appeal for the improved electricity connectivity of the region that will transform the region into a Balkan Benelux. Bulgaria, Romania and Greece should also come up with common initiatives in the area of education and science, and there are many other similar proposals. But the main conclusion is that our region, Central and Eastern Europe, should not only consume or see each other as the victim of policies articulated, formulated in Brussels. We want to be an active participant in formulating these policies. The good news for Europe is that we have diagnosed our problems, and it is even more important that after the reports of Enrico Letta and Mario Draghi were approved, the European Commission is now energetically taking action through the competitiveness compass and the follow-on policies as the Clean Industry Deal, the Union of Skills, and a number of other initiatives that need to become even more dense and well-defined for Europe to regain its strength in this dynamic world. We would like to specifically thank you, Madam Ribeiro, because you have probably the most difficult task in the Commission to find the right balance between the ambitious climate goals of the European Union and competitiveness, to strengthen our industry, to strengthen our security, and to ensure that people live in a better, safer, cleaner world. And I wish you every success in your endeavour. And I would like to also thank Bulgaria's Prime Minister, Mr. Zhelyazkov, for accepting our invitation. His participation is incredibly important to us. We have invited all ministers, and they've all accepted our invitations. And because institutions have not been very popular of late, I think this is a sign of courage. Also, this forum would not have been as effective if this was just a dialogue at expert level without any sound, robust involvement on the part of institutions. I know that today we will receive many questions, both for Mrs. Ribera and all other panelists. But what is important is that we seek the right solutions together, that we keep up the dialogue. So without further ado, I would like to turn over to our panelists and express my sympathies to the moderator, because we have so many topics and very little time. At the opening of the forum on Monday, Enrico Letta said that this week, Sofia is the European capital of discussions, and I think this is a very high recognition and hope, and gives us hope that the repercussions and implications of what we're discussing today will reach far beyond Sofia and Bulgaria. Prime Minister, Madam Deputy Vice President of the European Commission, Prime Minister Stanishev, former Prime Minister Stanishev, ladies and gentlemen, members of the European Parliament, dear guests. Mr. Stanishev mentioned the word dialogue several times, and there is no topic which is so hot as the topic that we are going to be discussing now. This is probably going to be the most interesting panel that will discuss the steps from now on and what will happen, particularly in light of the green transition. We have Bulgaria's Prime Minister, Mr. Rosen Zhelyakov, Mrs. Teresa Ribera, who's the Executive Vice President of the European Commission for a clean, just and competitive transition. We have Mr. Manol Genov, the Minister for Environment and Water. We have Mr. Dan Nica, a member of the European Parliament from Romania. He represents the Alliance of Socialists and Democrats, and otherwise he is a member of the Energy, Industry and Research Committee. We also have Irena Tsakova on the side of businesses, the Director General of Dundee Precious Metals, Veterana Lemor, the Head of Corporate Sustainability at Aurubis, and Konstantin Pushinov, the Head of the ANRAV project at Heidelberg Materials in Devnya. So I would like to first of all give the floor to Bulgaria's Prime Minister, Mr. Rosen Zhelyakov, for a few introductory words.
Good morning, Ms. Ribera. Colleagues, Mr. Stanishev, Ms. Stanisheva, dear friends, the advantage to be the first speaker is that any of the following speakers would be referring back to him or her. Mr. Stanishev said that the future is in our hands. There have been a lot of visionary statements made at this forum, and this has stirred quite a lot of interest. I was wondering, is the future in our hands if the present isn't? Aren't we becoming visionaries who are like modern influencers are doing something or saying something without actually having a clear picture of what we should be looking at? Visionaries also tend to be very detailed, and they are likely to speak and write at length. And this is perhaps why we are so far away from the Eastern wisdom and clarity of vision. But in Europe, we have been trying for ages to impose certain models on the rest of the world. At the same time, we have a quality of life which is envied by everybody else. In 2019, when the Green Deal was proclaimed with its ambitious goals of carbon neutrality by 2050, that was seen as a paramount value that concerns the quality of life, and it illustrated our understanding of the future of the Earth through the prism of our ambitions. All that was in the context of a series of crises, financial, demographic one, if you like, but we hadn't yet seen the war in Europe, and we couldn't even imagine at that time its impact. It reflected our understanding of values and quality of life. The ambitious goals set in terms of carbon neutrality, circular economy, renewables, etc., all that sounded at the time great, beautiful even. But in conjunction with the crisis that happened, that started to divide societies and was criticized by the industry. All that sounded rather ideologically loaded, at least for part of the political elite. Others saw in that an embodiment of their understanding of prosperity, of innovation, of progress. Since then, we have been going through a transition or a transformation of the Green Deal in its pure form to a deal for a clean industry, whereas seeking for an intersection between what needs to be done in terms of our environmental commitments and what our citizens expect in terms of their quality of life. Europe is facing raw material deficit, resource deficit. We haven't yet been able to ensure our energy autonomy. We need to conduct a lot of reforms, and here is the role of visionaries. They need to convince society of the reforms that are required. Can you imagine a referendum held on the Green Deal? Are you for or against? Can you imagine the outcome of such a referendum? So it's a question of not allowing ourselves to divide society, but of explaining what the situation is in terms of green innovations and technological progress, and within that context, talking about climate neutrality, decarbonization through more advanced, more modern industrialization. This is what our societies need, and all these policies are not despite, but in support of the common interest. I'm sure that we'll hear a lot of specific facts and information on the clean industry deal from the other speakers. We see very ambitious goals set out there. We talk about reducing costs. By 2040, they would amount to 260 billion. This is expenditure for energy, for completing the energy union. As Sergei mentioned, this goes through better connectivity, and better connectivity requires targeted investment. And this is the task of the Union as a whole. Targeted investment in connectivity, in renewable energy sources, but also the supply of such resources. And all that requires attracting investment. When the Commission announces investment plans, well, it is not investment from the EU itself, but it is attracting private investment. And in order to attract such investment, policies need to be attractive in themselves, not just for European investors, but other investors, global investors. Somebody was joking, asking the question of whether we could attract Elon Musk to work in Europe. Well, investment in clean energy, in energy infrastructure, goes hand in hand with energy security. And as well as developing a long-term understanding about how we are going to utilize energy resources and how are we going to go through the transition from natural gas and from pipeline gas to LNG. We have to consider long-term contracts, gas connectivity and investment in gas terminals, pipelines, interconnectors, and a common European policy, including a common European policy in terms of prices. Also, simplification of regimes, reducing the bureaucratic burden and regulatory pressure, something that has increased since 2019, especially in terms of climate neutrality requirements. So the magic word is simplification, facilitating financing, facilitating administrative procedures to fund green projects and to encourage technological development. A huge role to play has the European Investment Bank. The role of EIB is in reducing risks to investing in energy efficiency, in network components, etc. A lot of hope is also invested in the Decarbonization Bank with a potential of 100 billion, but all that is supposed to encourage also private initiative and private investment. As a political solution that we find good is the Center for Critical Raw Materials. It was our ambition to be neutral in terms of such raw materials, because in the past we saw ourselves as a beneficiary. But history has shown that this is the key, not just to technological, but also to investment interests. So we should not allow ourselves to lag behind in this competition. In 2022, the United States were 17% ahead of Europe. Last year, they are already 30% ahead of us. So we are indeed lagging behind when it comes to our understanding of development and growth. The Commission has a very ambitious program, and this program should be supported by each and every member state. Our government supports all the policies, the package of measures, the action plan on the clean industry deal, the overall approach, as well as the opportunities that are going to unfold. We need to translate those into the language of the Bulgarian market and make sure that we reduce bureaucratic burden and encourage and facilitate investment in a clean industry. The good thing is that the business in Bulgaria is nationally responsible, even when it comes to the mining industry, the steel industry, etc. Everybody has a clear understanding that they need to invest in energy-efficient technology. We have among us representatives of business sectors that have already invested a lot in support of the Bulgarian economy and its growth. I'll stop here, but I'll be open to questions. in the discussion that will follow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice President of the European Commission.
Dear Prime Minister, host, ministers, ambassadors, business community, citizens in general, it is my great privilege to be here, so thanks a lot for this invitation. I have to say that you have in front of you a committed European, a proud European, someone that is convinced on the importance of building our future, which is in our hands, taking into consideration that building it together is brighter, fairer, and it is pretty motivating. It is not that it is simple. Of course, it is not simple, but it is the best thing we can do. It is something that always is connected to our own dreams, our expectations, the possibility to join positive energies so that we can build a better future for our people. So I would like to stress what it has been said in the introductory comments being made up to now. First, yes, I'm fully convinced that the future is in our hands, and nobody can build the future on his or her own capacities. It is a better future if we do it together. This is why when bringing hope, when thinking about how we can build hope, it is much better to think that we belong to a community. We belong to an union. We are not alone. We can do things better if we do them together. So please resist anyone saying that on an individualistic approach you can improve. It's not truth. It's never truth. And then I agree with Leta's comment. Today, Sofia is the capital of Europe, the place where we can think together, face the challenges together, discuss the difficulties, the possibilities, the how to do, learning from the experience that others may have brought in the past, or identify in an anticipated manner the challenges ahead of us. So it is my great pleasure to be with you here in Sofia. Such a strategic and historic hub for so many things, for so many values, in this very critical juncture for Europe. Because it is going to be challenging, of course it is going to be challenging, but it is a moment where we identify to what extent relevant players that up to now have been part of our partnerships seem to be challenging the world that we have built together for decades, since the end of the World War II. How the main rules, how the expectations to build a peaceful and prosperous future may be challenged by very traditional means. So a time to stand up, to step up, to build that future that we want to build together, taking into consideration our own values. And I would say, our values is a very nice mix of an open, modern, and challenging economy with a great respect for freedoms, rights, and liberties, and a great respect for social expectations, for solidarity. So, that may fail in other geographies. There may be geographies that deliver a lot in economic performance in a very quick manner, but they do not respect so much the individual rights, expectations, or freedoms. There may be other places where they can perform very well, but they forget about inclusiveness and solidarity. And we in Europe Try to do things that probably are difficult and challenging, but try to stick to these values. Try to build the European dream that has been in the horizon of all our countries for such a long time. So today, my first message is congratulations. Congratulations to you. You have achieved quite a lot. Last week, when we were celebrating at the very same time, first, the fact that Bulgaria is ready to be part of the Euro family. Second, because in the case of Spain and Portugal, we were celebrating that it is 40 years ago that we signed the treaty, the act, to become part of the European communities. And I'm sure that with all that distress, with all those emotions that the challenges may represent in our societies, we can find ways to solve those challenges, to respond to those challenges in a much more positive way. So, yes, we need to decide, do we stand up and defend our values? Or we just give up and allow others to decide on our own? Because very honestly, remember that democracy, freedoms, rights, such a delicate balance between the different elements is a drop in the history. It's a drop in the ocean of history. So it is worth it to stand up, and it is worth it to find the ways forward. And Bulgaria is not a bystander in this history. Bulgaria, it's one of those countries in our eastern frontier in Europe that protects the European idea, that built on democracy, that provide an increasing welfare for its citizens. And remember, the main purpose of the European dream is to ensure high quality of life for Europeans and a peaceful world in the international context. Now you are preparing to join this Eurozone with all the ambitions, and of course I can understand that there may be many question marks, many doubts, but do take seriously the facts, the data, the capacity to anticipate where the risks and difficulties may be, so to come along with the people. The possibility to stress that there are so many good things connected to that, because that provides stability, because that lowers the risk of investment in your country, because that attracts the capacity to modernize your economy, because we Europeans are not alone on our own, because we Europeans pool resources so to facilitate that whenever we identify that there may be things that deserve coming along with the people, we have the capacity to come along with the people. I remember well when the euro came up, the single currency in Europe, aligning our economies, requiring efforts, but when management takes place in the right direction, it pays back. It facilitates the life of the Europeans. That has always been the case for Bulgaria, the successful story of Bulgaria since the joining of the European Union, and how the GDP per capita, the macroeconomic figures, the capacity to improve the infrastructures, the villages, is taking place. Everything is solved? Of course not. Of course not. There are many pending things, and I'm sure that the government is fully committed, but you are not alone. We belong to the same club. I've been Minister for Energy more than 6 years and a half. I had to phase out coal plants. I had to phase out coal mines. And I knew very well that this means being with the people, showing respect to those communities that during generations have been contributing to the creation of wealth, that have been developing solidarity among the different families, that feel the tension, the stress of the not known future. How to create opportunities to remain in these very same areas where they have lived for generations. And nobody can do this alone. Again, nobody can do this alone. It means a deep involvement from the institutions, generosity from everybody, thinking on how we can build our future. Again, how we can build our future, because the future is in our hands. And there may be people that think, yes, green is ideologist. I think that green may be an idea, an ideal, but it is also wisdom. We are more and more. We want to bet on a high quality of life for all, but the resources seem to be more or less the same. So it doesn't make sense to say that we need to choose between prosperity or the planet, between ambition or solidarity. In fact, we can only choose prosperity and ambition if we are realistic and smart when assessing what are the resources that we can count on so to build that prosperity. Otherwise, prosperity does not last. Otherwise, inclusiveness cannot take place. This is why I think that we deserve a serious conversation. And it is very legitimate and very normal that we have lots of question marks, lots of doubts. Because even when we are able to facilitate a common vision, a common landscape, an horizon where we share a brighter future, we need to gain that battle. We need to build the avenues that take into consideration the very short term, the impact in the first steps. It may be not a linear change, but we need to set the pillars to make it possible to accelerate this transformation in a positive way, without forgetting that there may be many people, many business communities, many local realities that deserve our attention. So if we do not embrace the social dimension of this enormous change, it is very difficult that it succeeds. But the good thing is that we Europeans know that these things go hand in hand. When we bet on people, when we take into consideration the physics dimension, the environmental dimension, we create, we produce economic wealth. And let's be very honest, that is also part of a large understanding of what security means. We Europeans know that security also means the creation of wealth and the share of prosperity, if we want to keep our democracies alive and kicking and getting deeper and deeper in terms of providing opportunities for everybody. So our success will depend on making this transition an opportunity for modernizing the industry, the business community, the economy, and to reduce the inequality gaps, to ensure that we retain young talent, to facilitate the skills, the opportunities for everybody, to ensure that this brings also good opportunities for our macroeconomic figures, for our health budget, for the quality of life in our cities, for the innovation at the smaller scale, bigger scale. This means building different frameworks and identifying where the add value of our communities may be, anticipating the skills that will be required, ensuring that the education and training process take place, ensuring that the services, the trade, the industry, the consideration of the environmental concerns are part of this conversation. We have proposed a clean industrial deal to ensure that the business case for decarbonization and modernization of energy systems is there, to ensure that we are smart when using the raw materials, to ensure that we build on healthy relationships with third countries, with other partners, to ensure that we reduce our vulnerabilities and weakness because of the high reliance of very few players from outside, to ensure that we keep on building and diving in the single market, in our own strengths as a continent, where everybody is expected to contribute, everybody is expected to benefit, And of course, this is also the case for Bulgaria. This means opportunities in many different aspects. Solar corridors from the Black Sea, battery hubs in Stara Zagora, green corridors to Turkey. Not hands out, but hands up, built on skills, on science, on solidarity, on joining and feeling we all are part of the same union. And it makes economic sense. That's how I have felt and experienced in my own country, in my own continent, in the continent that we share, in the union that we share. It saves billions. It has already saved billions. Billions that we can dedicate to keep on building that future that depends of our own capacities, that it is in our hands. So let's forget about just feeling that there are lots of reasons why we may complain. Let's try to identify how we can provide answers, questions, to keep on building those solutions, to keep on building that future. So if we use our own resources in better efficiency, smart infrastructures, we will be improving our strengths and retaining talent. We will be investing in innovation. We as Europeans will be investing on our people, on our science, on our research. We will be taking into account the knowledge, the facts, the data, instead of trusting things that are not real, fake propaganda, or deleting the words that may be challenging. Do you think that deleting the words climate change, gender balance, women could solve any problem? Of course not. Of course not. At the very same time, we know that we have a very great asset because we are an union, so we may build on our complementarities and we may help to spread this wealth all over Europe, reducing cost, facilitating the circulation, the capacity to ensure that services, business, but also reducing the red tape that in certain occasions makes our life much more difficult. So deepening in our common single market will save money for all Europeans. Building Europe beyond a market, as Enrico Letta was saying, trying to identify how we can build the trust, the confidence on our own economy, so to make full use of our savings to invest in a better Europe, is part of the mandate at the Commission level in this cycle. This decade is going to be critical, and we need to decide whether we want to deepen into the European dream or we turn back and come back to a past where there may be certain capacities to more or less coordinate certain goals, but borders will come up again. Difficulties, burdens, and costs will rise again. And the capacity to play the role that I'm convinced we need to play in this crazy world of today, to remain united, to face the challenges of the geopolitics and world challenges, could diminish. So, thinking about the green transition, do never think that it is only regulation or burdens. On the contrary, it is building the future that is in our hands. It is about dignity, hope, and responsibility. It's about creating opportunities. We are not going to compete if we go towards a race down in terms of lowering the standards for social concerns and labor, or pushing forward the cost of destroying our environment. On the contrary, it could mean more burdens for the next generations. In this moment of uncertainty, the best place to be, but also the huge responsibility we have, is feel that as Europeans, The future of our societies is in our hands, and the possibility to contribute to a much more peaceful and brighter future for the rest of the world is also in our hands. I count on you, we count on you. As I said, I feel myself a proud European benefiting from the European dream, and I would like to stress that I would love to be part of building together with you the European dream in Bulgaria. Thanks a lot.
Благодаря. Сега нашата
Thank you. Now we launch our discussion. All our panelists would make a short introductory speech, responding perhaps to the issues raised by Mr. Zhelyazkov and Ms. Ribera, starting with Mr. Manuel Ganov. Madam Executive Vice President of the European Commission, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to speak after what we heard about the clean industry deal and the green future of Europe, the ideas shared by Ms. Ribera. These are topics that are very important for us today, creating a clean industry and a decarbonization of heavy industry in Bulgaria. The Clean Industry Pact focuses on making Europe an attractive industrial center in a marriage between environmental and economic objectives. It is a new model for development from which we can all win by protecting the environment and our own future. The green transition does not mean turning our back on industry, but it's sustainable development. Industry has a key role to play in the Bulgarian economy in terms not just of manufacturing, but also producing raw materials and resources for other parts of the economy. It can be the driver of the transformation to circular and green economy. Clean industry means lower energy costs, a reduced regulatory sanction risks, digitalization, access to new markets. We have to be very careful in order not to jeopardize our strategic autonomy. We should not replace one type of dependency with another. I'm looking forward to the presentation of the Act on Industrial Decarbonization. We should not compromise on environmental integrity and our green objectives. The Draghi and Letter report, the Clean Industry Pact and other omnibus packages clearly show that there are still deficiencies for us to overcome. Bulgaria has always called for a balance between pragmatism and ambition. The Ministry of the Environment and Water has always been of the opinion that business and industry should be provided with a clear road ahead, a predictable regulatory framework for the next at least 10 years. In this way, the business would indeed become the engine of change, as it is the business that creates jobs. When left to work in peace under reasonable regulations, it can do that. Our experience has shown that the state is not always the best the best housekeeper and the best manager, we still own a debt to the industry, to our manufacturers, to our businesses. So we need to make sure that we hear the voice of the business. The future of EU competitiveness should ensure that there are sufficient resources to support the industry and make it more sustainable. What is crucial is also taking into account national and regional disparities, disparities in terms of living standards, and also ensure that the measures that are implemented would not lead to further divergence. We should not allow that the economic transition is not fair and leaves anybody behind. We should protect households suffering from energy poverty. We should look after all the vulnerable communities that are likely to be affected by the transition. We need to improve access to infrastructure, and we should encourage the production of low carbon emission fuels. We have reiterated many times that funding the green transition in the EU is rather fragmented and complicated. We would like to see some simplification through the use of investment programs. At the same time, we have to ensure a geographical balance and support for smaller companies through streamlining financial resource access mechanisms, as well as streamlining the private finance procedures. All that would allow us to address climate change, the loss of biodiversity, and the rest of the environmental challenges. We need to be able to grapple with that, and at the same time should protect the quality of life for EU citizens. Environmental legislation would play a key role in all that. We'll continue with our effort to support sustainable development and the protection of natural resources with a focus on social justice and regional development. Let us not forget that when we ignore nature, sooner or later we feel the backlash in all its severity. Thank you, Minister. And now we turn over.
Thank you so much. I would like to say congratulations for organizing this event. I'm Romania, I'm your neighbor, but I've been in many countries, and such a great event, it is one of a kind. You have to be proud of that. Congratulations, Sergei. Congratulations, Mrs. Stanisheva. Congratulations, Prime Minister of Bulgaria, because you have to be proud of that. I came here on purpose. Of course, I have regular meetings with our Vice President of the European Commission, with Teresa Ribera. We are working closely, and I have to say many thanks, Teresa, because coming to Sofia, coming to Bucharest, it's a strong signal that European Union should be the same in Brussels and in Sofia and in Bucharest. And that's a very important support for all these people, because here it's a strong feeling on somehow discrimination. Let's put it in a very blunt way. Many times, the European projects, because speaking about decarbonization, it is about money at the end of the day. Many times, the Bulgarian companies, the Romanian companies, they are losing the competition because of one criteria, which, by the way, is not in the EU legislation. Lack of similar expertise on the implementation of the European projects. And of course, if you don't have one European project, how you can have experience, similar experience? I have this speech with you, with Ekaterina Zakharieva, with everybody, because this has to be put in a very blank way. You shouldn't expect that we'll have progress in this part of the Europe if we don't fix that. And number two, decarbonization is about energy. In Bulgaria, in Romania, and in Greece, we are number one in the European Union when it comes to prices. The highest prices of the energy, they are on this region. And why is that? One of the major reasons is the lack of interconnection between Hungary and Austria, not enough capacity, and zero connection between Austria and Slovakia. If you look to the map, there is no way that you can have an interconnection between Bulgaria, Romania, Greece, and the rest of Europe, because that's the only way you can have an interconnection. And what is the end result? In Bulgaria, Romania, and Greece, we are having the highest bills. The citizens, from 1st of July, together with the new government, will have the highest prices for citizens in Romania. How much? Around 300 euros megawatt hour. That will lead to 1 million people which they have to choose between buying food and medicaments or paying the electricity bills. 2.2 times increase. 2.2 times. For the companies in Romania, but also I've seen the figures for Bulgaria, the highest prices, 250, 260 euros, so long as so far. How they can be competitive? So from one hand, they have to pay the higher prices, the highest prices, and from other hand, they import from the countries outside the EU, which they don't have to pay taxes. And of course, we are losing jobs, we are losing opportunities, and we are losing the trust of the people, because the people, they don't see a future. How we have to do that? To better address and look at the main reasons why we are in this very situation. Me, I'm among others, the head of the SD delegation in the European Parliament, but I'm also dealing as a coordinator in ITRE. And this kind of discussions we have extensively with all the commissioners. We are lucky because we are listening by Teresa, by Dan Jorgensen, but we have to have a common voice. My dear friends, this region will not solve the problem unless we are together. I spoke this morning with my friend Peter Vitanov, an extremely valuable member of the European Parliament the last term. We used to be like Spain and Portugal, the Iberic Alliance. We have to continue to do that, because in this battle, nobody will pay attention to our problems unless we are united and we have a strong voice. And speak in a very blank way and put it on the table. Because Teresa Ribera, she's today in Sofia. Maybe she will come, but not every month. She has to go back in Brussels and say, guys, she's the executive vice president of the European Commission, and she has to say, I've been to Sofia, and there are these very problems. We have to solve them. We have to solve them because there are millions and millions of people affected by something which has to be addressed. By whom? By the European Commission, by the European Parliament, and you are here to support you. So these are my two main messages, and I come on purpose to say that you are not alone. We are with you, Romania, because Romania is Bulgaria, Bulgaria is Romania, and the Greece, and together we can solve our problems for the greater good of our people, our companies, and our economies. Thank you so much for everything. Congratulations, Bulgaria, for what you did today.
Thank you, Mr. Nika. Thank you very much for putting the region on the table. And you carefully avoided to name it, by the way, and I fully agree, because Balkans, nobody wants to be Balkans, Southeast Europe is too long, post-communism is offensive, so I agree that the region is appropriate way to put it as a whole. The region, we are the region. Но сега да чуем business.
Now I would like to give the floor to the business community and Mrs. Irena Tsakova from Dundee Precious Metals. Prime Minister Mrs. Ribeira, ladies and gentlemen, Monica, thank you. Businesses are here. It's actually quite frightening to be among such incredible participants. I was listening to what Mrs. Ribeira said, and I remembered that a smoking chimney was a symbol of prosperity, and now she said, she has to close down mines, and this is what happens, progress marches on, and every single one of us wants to live in a clean environment, but equally, every single one of us will probably agree that this cannot happen overnight. So thank you for thinking about the industry. Thank you for enacting the Clean Industry Act and trying to find solutions that will help us transform. There are many regulations, and I'm pleased that you are here because both in Brussels, in Europe, and in Bulgaria, there are stringent requirements, licensing requirements, and a host of other requirements. But clean industry and green transformation and transition means that we need to do something. The Americans managed to put a man on the moon in 8 years, and in Europe it takes us 20 years to open a mine. So yes, we need to change maybe more than one thing in order to facilitate licensing, which doesn't mean that we should abandon the requirements. No, I think that businesses should be subject to strict monitoring and supervision, but equally arrangements for monitoring, for supervision should be such that people and businesses trust the process. We need technologies, we in innovation, both citizens and businesses. And I can give you an example with our mine in Chelopech. We are now using electrical devices underground, effective, quick, compact. Our operators, however, have been retrained. The machines are noiseless. The machines have improved their work. However, there are no regulations that tell us how to be using these devices underground. So, the legislator included should try to be more expedient in order to enable innovation. Because on the one hand, you're telling us do something, but on the other hand, if we try to do something, it turns out that it is not properly regulated. So it's important to sit down together and think about what we can do. We can have small pilot projects, trying out this solution or that. And lastly, please keep thinking about the people. Miners, mining, tended to carry a very negative connotation, but our workers are now operating high-tech machinery. These people need skills. Businesses should be able to respond to needs and changing requirements very quickly. These are dynamic times. We either we need to either be capable of changing or will become irrelevant. We need to have the freedom to introduce innovations. Resources and funds are available, but it is also important to be able to work in a predictable, just and fair environment. Thank you. And Mrs. Lemoro from Aurubis.
Be able to speak. Before I have some very concrete asks I have for the Prime Minister and for the Commissioner, but before I formulate these, just maybe a few sentences about our industry, because before I ask for something, I first want to offer something. And the copper industry in itself and the metals industry, I mean, we're a crucial partner for the green transition. No wind turbines, no batteries, no nothing without copper, without non-ferrous metals. One thing. The second thing is Aurubis is a strategic partner, a strategic player in Bulgaria, with accounting for, I think, over 7% of the exports in this country. We've been investing in the country for over 2 decades, or almost 2 decades now. Only last year, we have announced a 400 million investment program, investing in first a production extension and secondly in a PV plant on our grounds, which will in the end account for 16% of our electricity supply. And here I'm actually coming to the gist of everything, the electricity supply, because we are very electricity intensive as an industry, and we're going to stay like that. So our aim is basically to have this electricity in green, to have it available at every time, and to have it at a competitive price. And this is basically our 3 asks we desperately need in order to be able to further invest, to further do our part. On the European level, this means that we need a strong protection against carbon leakage, because with the ETS costs, both direct and indirect, we have a unique situation in the world with additional costs. So we really very much ask for the possibility to have an indirect cost compensation also after 2030 for the ETS. The second thing is the new state aid framework for the Clean Industrial Deal, where the role of the stable baseload consumer should be recognized. We need to have electricity always. We are not flexible in how we use this electricity. Therefore, with the more flexible approach of the renewable energies, we need to have a baseload, and it would not be advisable to penalize companies who actually use up this base load and actually give a stability to the whole grid. The second thing is, in order to decarbonize the electricity supply, we really need aid for this Scope 2 emissions to decarbonize them, and so we need the possibility, the eligibility within the aid for them to become eligible for decarbonization. For example, this means for PPAs, public purchase agreements with, for example, wind companies, we need a reasonable price for that. One idea, for example, to reduce the pricing would be an aid for example, to allocate CBAM and ETS revenues, partially at least, for industry and electricity-intensive industries to be able to reduce the costs of PPAs. In Bulgaria, we don't even have the possibility actually to buy PPAs or guarantees of origin. Here it would be great, and we had this already, a union of states like Romania, Greece, Bulgaria, to have a combined market in order to make the market bigger and to make it better possible to actually buy, for example, guarantees of origin, which at the moment is not possible that well. That's from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Vedrana. And now, last but not least, накрая, господин Бужинов.
Mr. Konstantin Buzhinov from Heidelberg Materials, what is most important for you?
Prime Minister, Ms. Ribera, Mr. Ganov, I address you first because I'm grateful that you are attending this forum and are ready and willing to discuss the challenges facing the Bulgarian industry, because we are in Bulgaria, as well as the huge challenge facing EU industry in general. It is not my first time that I participate in this forum, but it's the first time where representatives of the governments and institutions have stayed on until the end. So I'm really grateful to you. I would like to congratulate Mr. Stanishev and Ms. Stanisheva for the excellent organization. I think they have achieved something that is at EU level, at least, something remarkable. We need to encourage and praise the successes of the Bulgarian industry, but Bulgarian enterprises. I'm grateful to the audience for being here, listening to us, discussing the challenges that we're facing and the transformation that we need to go through. All three companies represented on this panel are part of the heavy industry businesses that are hard to ignore and hard to not pay attention to. There are a lot of difficulties that face us, but we have to acknowledge that the situation has changed and we need to change as well. I'll try not to speak too long because I realize that there is a Q&A session coming up. The cement industry globally generates the highest level of pollution, 7 to 8% of the global CO2 emissions. We also ours is the second most commonly used product after water. And that makes us so important. We need to find a way ahead. We at Heidelberg Materials are among the three largest companies in this sector. We have a well-structured policy in decarbonization. We had our Capital Markets Day, and for 4 hours we discussed issues with our investors, our shareholders, and the rest of the stakeholders. We announced our decarbonization priorities until 2030, 2040, and 2050. We do not see decarbonization as a task just for Europe. We see it in a global context. That makes the challenge that we're faced with a huge one indeed. There are a lot of barriers to decarbonization, and it includes the cumbersome regulatory regime, also the permit regimes, and we also face higher and higher costs in our operations. We are close to an industrial giant in the face of Turkey, which has a very stringent protectionist policy. As a cement manufacturer, that impacts on the competitiveness of our products. Bulgaria is the worst affected country in Europe by the import of Turkish cement. Despite all that, we are very proud that our company is among the few companies in Eastern Europe that received funding under the innovations program, and we have made huge steps in the area of carbon capture. Such projects are very complicated because they are innovative, they require rethinking the processes and also alignment with the national regulatory framework, and perhaps most importantly, very good communication with society at large, because this is a huge problem for the industry and for the launch of new projects in the country. Our company is a leading one when it comes to carbon capture. Our plans and our commitments to the investors is that by 2030 we'll have launched projects to the amount of for the capture of 8 to 10 million tons of carbon dioxide, which would reduce our carbon footprint. And just to illustrate, with something that is understandable to everybody, the goal is by 2030, 50% of our revenues should come from green products. I'm really pleased that yesterday in Norway we opened a new manufacturing facility in Brevik. It's the first of its kind in Europe as well as globally. It captures all of its carbon dioxide, and it will be able to produce hundreds of thousand tons of carbon neutral cement by the end of this year. Well, thank you very much indeed. I'm pleased that we heard from the representatives of the industry, both their questions, but also they shared with us their achievements. Now we'll have 10 minutes for a discussion, so I'll urge you to ask short questions and give brief answers. And I'll start myself with a question that is probably for more than just $1 million. And the question is, can we be both clean and successful, both green and competitive as an economy? Or is this just a utopia that we have been deluding ourselves with here in Europe? Let's start with the business first. Ms. Takwa, can we? The short answer is yes, we can. With the agility of the business, with higher efficiency when it comes to permit regimes, and with the trust of our citizens. Yes, we can, in a couple of words. Oh, no, we can't. It's going to be difficult if we expand on our answer. Vetrana, yes and no.
And yes, to really reach full decarbonization, we will, as I said, need massive investment, and this means massive help also from the state.
Господин Buzhinov?
Mr. Buzhinov, yes, we are sure that we can. The process is going to be very complex. We need strong government, strong EU. It is important that we have the single EU market behind us. It's great that we'll become part of the Eurozone. That will help as well. And we need to be able to integrate innovations and implement that and optimize our manufacturing processes as quickly as possible. But we need a strong state to support the business. Okay, we have the strong governments here. Can we or can't we? Yes, we can and we must.
Have to play the pessimist now because it's too The panel has turned too optimistic, I guess.
Well, you sure that you want to hear that? So, my honest answer is, we can do it if you have money to do it. So, without money, it's just a dream. That's why we have to have the European Commission, we have to have the European Investment Bank, we have to have as much as possible the national governments, because without money, we cannot increase the competitivity and we cannot finance these projects. The CCS, that's the most expensive project ever. Without money provided by somebody, it will be no projects. The same is true for all sectors. For steel, the same is true for aluminum, the same is true for chemicals, for everybody.
Everybody can do it with money. Let's try.
Without money?
Thank you.
Nice try. But
Madame Ribera, from everything you have heard, there were questions, there were demands. From everything you have heard, can we do it or not?
The short answer is yes, and the contrary is wrong. It's easier to create money than to create nature. So there is no long-lasting prosperity if we do not mainstream this. And I think that the second main message is that, being quite honest, we know that this is hard because we are changing the way we produce, the way we consume, and this turns back to values and priorities of the society. So we will only achieve if we are united, pay attention to each other, and try to build on the things that work and correct the things that we try but do not work as well as we expected. But yes, of course, that's the beauty of building the future, which is in our hands.
Thank you. Господин министър-председател.
Prime Minister, it makes sense that the business would turn to you and ask for fewer regulations, ask you for your support. From what we heard, do you believe that we can square the circle and have both the green transition and preserve competitiveness? So, and you want me to answer in just a word? Well, that would be quite a record. Well, we haven't finished yet. Okay, I'll answer you. I'll say yes, indeed. Yes, but no, as we say in Bulgarian. Well, there is no competition between having it clean and having it profitable, but for that we need sustainability to ensure cost effectiveness. So sustainability, to have sustainability, we need predictable business environment, protection for investment, and also predictable regulations, not lack of regulations, because then the question arises, how about public interest? But indeed, predictable regulations, quick procedures if needed, but also very transparent, because there are a lot of issues that arise around regulations. And last but not least, we have to combat corruption. The investment process, if we want to build, for example, a highway today, it takes about 5 years from now to deal with all the regulatory requirements before we can actually start constructing. There is a lot that can be simplified, but it should not be at the expense of the environment, the fairness towards landowners and everything else. So this is the role of the state, of the government, to ensure that the public interest is aligned with the requirements for sustainability and cost effectiveness. Congratulations. So now we have time for one final question to everybody, and I ask it in two ways. I'll start with the business to ask them whether a compromise is indeed possible between political requirements, regulatory requirements from Brussels, and the desire of business to develop and make money. A compromise is something that defines Europe as such. We are good at finding compromises, but it's also a question of how that compromise is going to be packaged for society. Starting with you, Mr. Bushinov. The compromise is necessary. Compromise is necessary in each and every area of life. We are not talking here just about the green transition. Without a compromise, we cannot have progress. We need to change mentality at European level when it comes to the way we perceive a risk, because our economies are quite risk-averse. And this we can see on the financial markets and a number of innovations that come from Europe. So we need a change in that respect. We have a very well-positioned, small but important economy when it comes to the green transition, because every one of us sitting here on this panel and everybody who is not here today, we manufacture, we create critical raw materials. All that is necessary for the green transition. We need those resources, and we can have them. And in conclusion, perhaps, which is something that we wish for, I hope that this, to say in the same way as our achievements are appreciated today, we hope that in 2027 the Prime Minister and the Minister of Energy would be at the opening of our carbon capture installation. Great.
Well, I think it's the most noble task of politics is to balance out different interests.
Yeah.
So I am very sure that it's going to be a compromise. The most important task of the industry is to make long-term profits with a focus on long-term. Long-term meaning and incorporating, obviously, decarbonization, treating your people well, environment, etc. So these points incorporate the profit, the long-term profit bit. So this is also a weighing out of different interests. So yes, compromise is the only possible way.
Госпожо Цакова.
Аз понеже не обичам думата компромис.
I don't like trade-offs. I should rather use the word balance and well-considered risk, because businesses always look at risks. This is a step that we never circumvent, but then again, we always know that only those who run risks actually make profit. Yes, balance means that we have each party looking after its own interests. Brussels needs to, of course, keep up its good work to push the green transition forward, whereas businesses, do what is necessary to make it happen, so that everybody is happy.
Well, compromise for me is equal pragmatism. So it is about finding ways, means, and to reach the best result. That's for me the most important the aspect. And there is one but. Keep in mind, European Union, it should be one size fits all. If you don't say look, all Bulgarian hands, they're a little bit longer. For me, I don't have, I need a coat which is like that. Nobody, and nobody will fight for you. So compromise is pragmatism and fight.
I'm sure everybody likes this here in the audience. Господин Minister.
Minister, because we mentioned investment intentions and the production of raw materials, with the Prime Minister and the government, we have a policy of not actually getting in the way of businesses. This is our policy, regardless of the deficit of know-how, staff, and so on and so forth. But because we're talking raw materials, I think we should also consider the place of circular economy, which can also be a source of raw materials. Not primary source materials, but an input for future industries. Recycling has a lot of potential in Europe as well as in Bulgaria. It is essential for lowering dependence on the supply of critical raw materials. And this is also critical for innovation. So Bulgaria should pursue higher ambitions in this regard. Thank you. Circular.
Did this discussion help you in some way, and is your optimism still unbroken?
Thank you so much for the question. I was going to speak about compromise, but yes, of course, it is a very important discussion, because I think that what we have done, and allow me to use Professor Asegolu's thoughts, is identifying what future we want to build. But in order to build that future, that landscape, each one has to take her role. And taking a role is more effective when we pay attention to the concerns of the others, so that we can reach common ground on how to build the avenues, the pathways, the sense of direction that brings us into the future. So yes, we need regulation to build the adequate context to facilitate things. Yes, we need a better understanding on how the innovation, the industrial capacities, the possibility to be pretty demanding on the industrial evolvements can take place. And in order to do so, let's not forget the people backing the trajectories, because they experience the benefits and they count on their own expectations for a better future. So I think that it has been quite a great conversation among all the panelists, and I'm willing to get also the feedback from the people in the room.
You will get it. Thank you. Господин Желязков,
Mr. Желязков, at the beginning you said that the first always has a benefit, but of course you have the benefit of being the last, because nobody will be able to argue with you afterwards. Okay. Compromise is a word we don't like much in Bulgaria, particularly if we talk about historical compromise. But I would like to address 2 points. The first one is that the member states of the European Union, that we need to ensure consistency of regulation, so that both Romania, Bulgaria and Belgium are subject to the same set of rules. And I think that the Commission has long had an idea about the so-called 28 regime, a regime which introduces common regulations in all member states, which will require very bold decisions, a very bold idea, a very ambitious idea. And if we could implement it, then we won't be discussing compromise, because the greatest compromises that we've been been following the path of cohesion for 30 years now, but we are still lagging much behind. Societies get tired, people get tired, rather than having endless discussions of what works, what's not working. We can do everything if we have clear goals, clear policies, and if we, when we say we're going to have a single market, actually do create a single common market. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for this wonderful panel, where people with sometimes conflicting interests were part of the same discussion and managed to stay optimistic until the end. We will now have a family photo here on the stage, and then we will have the next panel. You were a great audience. Thank you.